Hello everyone, this is Fine from Awesome Tech Gaming Pro. I hope you all are well. Today I'm going to talk about the Intel Core i9-13900KS, which is world's first 6 GHz 320W CPU. The $700 Core i9-13900KS Special Edition is the fastest gaming chip in the world with its record-setting 6 GHz peak turbo clock. But the costly chips relatively small performance advantage over the vanilla 3900K isn't worth the eye-watering upcharge. The 24-core Intel Core i9-13900KS Special Edition processor carries an eye-watering $700 price tag, but it has a feature that Intel feels warrants the price tag. This is the first consumer PC chip to run at 6 GHz without overclocking, extending Intel's lead over AMD's fastest Ryzen 7000 processors. However, with a whooping 250W base power specification, this 13th gen Raptor Lake chip is also now officially the most power-hungry desktop CPU in history. Its voracious octet even peaks at 320W in a new extreme power delivery profile. Intel's Raptor Lake processor have taken the lead in gaming, productivity and value over AMD's Zen 4 Ryzen 7000 predecessor. But the competition remains stiff. The relatively low-profile 3900KS launch comes as AMD pips 3 new Ryzen 7000X 3D processors with its disruptive 3D V-Cache tech that delivers explosive gains in gaming performance. The 3D V-Cache tech's first iteration, AMD's Ryzen 7 5800X 3D, overtook Intel's Alder Lake as the best CPU for gaming. But Intel later retook the crown with Raptor Lake. AMD's Ryzen 7000X 3D chips are poised to come to market in mere weeks. And the Core i9-13900KS is meant to keep Intel Silicon entrenched at the top of the CPU benchmark charts when AMD's new chips arrive. That might be a tall order. The Ryzen 7000X 3D chip looks exceptionally promising due to their exotic performance enhancing tech. In contrast, the 3900KS is built on the same architecture as the 3900K, just with a higher speed binning to accommodate 200 MHz faster clock rates. Otherwise, it uses the same fundamental design as its standard counterpart, but it comes with a hefty upcharge that destroys any hint of value proposition for all but the extreme overclocking crowd. Naturally, if you're looking to buy a $700 chip, price considerations go out of the window. This is a pure speed play for those with deep pockets. For now, I don't know if the Core i9-13900KS will keep Intel in the top spot when the Ryzen 7000X 3D chips arrive, but it looks like it will be close. The 3900KS is the fastest Intel desktop PC chip, and even at stock settings, it drew up to 328W and ran at 100 degrees Celsius to scrap out every last bit of performance. Because the 3900KS is a special edition, the company will only produce a limited number of these processors. Hence, the $700 price tag. Despite the high pricing, Intel has actually lowered the ceiling for access to its most premium silicon. The previous gen 12900KS debuted at $740, but the Intel later increased the price of all its 12th gen chips, bringing it to $823. Intel selects its premium binned 3900K silicon for the 3900K, so it is guaranteed to be among the very best silicon the company has to offer. That will make the chips very attractive to overclockers, as paying the extra $110 for the case model improves your odds in the silicon lottery, essentially assuring you are getting a cherry chip. As with the Core i9-13900K, the case model comes with 8 hyper-threaded P-cores and 16 single-threaded E-cores for a total 24 cores and 32 threads. The case model's P-cores have a 3 GHz base clock and reach up to 6 GHz on 2 cores via thermal velocity boost tech. This allows the processor to shift into slightly higher frequencies if it remains under a certain temperature threshold. Meanwhile, the standard Turbo Boost 3.0 clock rates reach 5.8 GHz. I found that the chip easily peaks at 6 GHz, though the impact on workloads can vary. The E-cores kick in for background and multi-threaded tasks with a 2.2 GHz base and 4.3 GHz boost, identical to the 13900K. Most other features like the supported DDR4 3200 and DDR5 5600 transfer rates, 32 MB of L2 and 36 MB of L3 cache remain the same. As before, the LGA 1700 chip is compatible with 600 series motherboards, but you will want one of the best equipped Z series boards to quench the 13900K's thirst for power. However, selecting the right motherboard is a bit more complicated for the 13900K's due to the new 320W extreme power profile. Intel's power profiles have a few key variables. The PL1 power specification quantifies extended use at base clocks and is also known as the processor base power. In contrast, PL2 power quantifies when the chip is under full load for short periods and is also known as the maximum turbo power (MTP). ICC max denotes the maximum current the chip can pull when under heavy load. Intel also used to define a tau variable that specified the duration of the boost PL2 state before the chip dropped back into PL1. Intel has since stopped defining tau for K-series models because it assigns PL1 and PL2 as the same value for Alder Lake and following gens in the reference BIOSes that it sends to OEMs first. This means the chip always operates in a boosted PL2 state. Intel's new policy of sending reference BIOSes with PL1 equal to PL2 settings basically invalidates even having a PL1 value, and the fact that the steels exists on the specification sheet as a processor base power PBP setting, the lower of the two power specifications, is misleading. Intel defined an extreme power profiles for its regular 13900K. The 253W PL1 by PL2 values remain the same for both the standard and extreme profile, but the extreme profiles ICC max reaches 400 ampere up from 307 ampere. The KS model has the same default profiles as the 13900K, but also has its own new extreme power profile that allows for a 320W PL1 by PL2 and 400 ampere ceiling. You will need to ensure that your motherboard can deliver the peak current if you want to unleash the full power of the case, as not all motherboards can for a long period of time. Motherboard vendors allow assigning a higher ICC max value in the BIOS, typically under settings like core by CPU current limit. But that doesn't mean the motherboard can actually deliver that amount of current. Obviously, B and H series boards don't make the cut. Intel defines these recommended power profiles but allows motherboard vendors to ignore them completely, and exceeding the default values doesn't void the warranty. Thus, by default, most motherboard makers completely ignore the limits and assign the maximum values for PL1, PL2 and ICC max, resulting in higher performance and more heat. Even at stock settings, the Core i9-13900KS heat up to 328 watt of power and 100 degrees Celsius in our testing. We'll see what power draw, performance and thermals look like, including gaming and productivity benchmarks. Intel's adaptive boost technology ABT dynamically boosts to higher all-core frequencies based on available thermal headroom and electrical conditions, so peak frequencies can vary by design. This tech allows the chip to operate at 100 degrees Celsius during normal operation. If the chip runs under the 100 degrees Celsius threshold, it will increase its power consumption until it reaches the safe 100 degrees Celsius limit, thus providing more performance. However, this feature is only active on the Core i9-13900K and the 13900KS, so other Raptor Lake processors won't exhibit the same behavior. You can think of ABT much like a dynamic auto overclocking feature, but because the chip stays within Intel's specification of a safe 100 degrees Celsius temperature limit, it is a supported and warranted feature that doesn't fall into the same classification as overclocking. ABT uplift will vary by chip. Much of the frequency uplift depends upon the quality of your chip. Hence, the silicon lottery comes into play, along with cooling and power delivery capabilities. Remember, AMD's Ryzen 7000 also runs at its limit of 95 degrees Celsius at stock settings, so higher temperatures have become the norm of both chip makers. To remove thermals as a limitation, we always use the same 280mm Corsair 115i AIO cooler for all the test. However, Intel says that it achieved the best results with the case paired with a 360mm radiator. By running the same test with all power limits removed on a 280mm and a 360mm AIO, the single-threaded test also shows that the 3900KS boosted to 6 GHz frequently regardless of the cooler. The chip reached 100 degrees Celsius with both coolers during a series of heavily multi-threaded apps like Y-Cruncher, Cinebench, Blender and POV Ray, just as Intel designed it to do. The 360mm cooler config ran the same 5.6 GHz all-core clock during heavy work as the 280mm setup, yet it also consumed around 20 to 25 watt more during some types of work. That's it. 360mm additional cooling capacity enables that extra bit of power consumption, but the 7% to 9% increase occurs at the top of the chip's voltage frequency curve, where increased power consumption is incredibly inefficient. As in near peak power, double-digit percentage increases in power consumption often only yield single percentage performance gains. That means this slightly higher power will not make much difference in actual benchmarks. We also overclock the chip via turbo multipliers to 6 GHz on 2 P cores and 5.7 GHz when more than 2 cores are active. While dialing in a 4.4 GHz all-core overclock on the E cores, the chip only required a 1.29 volt V core to sustain these frequencies, indicating it is a cherry chip. The overclocked config uses less power than stock settings, showing that the chip's native power management is inefficient. The overclocked settings enable much more performance than the stock settings that consumed more power. The chip barely pushed over 300 watt with standard applications, but switching gears to the strenuous but not at all realistic Prime 95 stress test yielded a much higher peak power consumption of 328 watt. Power consumption leveled off after a short period, so it's possible a custom water cooling loop would allow the chip to consume more for a longer period of time. But again, this won't result in very meaningful performance improvements in real-world workloads. This chip is tuned to the absolute top of its voltage frequency curve. There isn't a huge difference in cooling capacity between 280mm and 360mm AIOs. On cumulative performance measurements, the improved cooling doesn't result in a linear improvement in performance in or gaming applications benchmarks. Improvement in real-world gaming and productivity applications with the 360mm cooler was around 1%. As such, used the test results from 280mm configuration for our gaming and productivity benchmarks. Overclock performance gave an extra 5% in 100p gaming and 4% in threaded work, but be aware that the increased memory throughput DDR5-6800 for the overclock config is a big contributor here. Additionally, the overclocked vanilla 13900K trailed by only 1% in games and 2.5% in threaded apps. Further tuning for more luck in the silicon lottery could narrow that gap. Temperatures can limit your performance during stock operations, so if you purchase the 3900KS plan for a powerful cooler to extract the full performance, I think a 280mm AIO would be sufficient. But if you are chasing the last 1% of performance, the 360mm AIO will get you there. The next video I will show you the overclocking performance, how to overclock the 3900KS chip. So that's it from now. If you like this video, please subscribe and press the bell icon for future notification update. Thanks for watching.